All right, I think it started. Hey, I'm here with Trey Moore today. I guess to go ahead and get started for this interview, why don't you go ahead and just tell us
Yeah, sure.
your name and occupation?
Okay. Well, Laniel introduced me. I'm Trey Moore. I'm a project developer under uh, Wes Sutherland in the group. And so what we do is we take a lot of potential projects, say 100 of them, and 10 of them might stick. And we try to put the ones that look like they have higher potential uh, and try to get a schedule and a scope. And then if we're real lucky, then we use the project life cycle and throw it over the fence to other people who eventually execute it. My background, I've been with Williams almost 15 years. It's been great. Started off in the project execution group, putting in a lot of compression projects, and then took a stint on construction, and then moved into the system planning group where I worked primarily on Northwest Pipeline. So I feel pretty lucky that I've got to see a lot of different assets, all natural gas within the organization. And the best part is about a year ago, I got my uh, MBA, just like Laniel. And so go Pokes at Oklahoma State University. So I think Laniel's really doing a great job. I think it was a good decision for me in my career. The biggest thing that I want Laniel and others to take away is that it's a signal to your employer of that you are capable and want to do a little bit more. And so that's what's happened in my career. And I really appreciate it. I have no regrets for going through the great program at Oklahoma State.
All right, that's awesome, Trey. Great introduction. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into these questions. So what what motivates you to be a leader?
You know, I am not a formal leader right now. I'm maybe a leader in the aspects of trying to push projects through to develop them into good shape, and you do have to interact with a lot of people. But one thing that I do like to see is progression of individuals, especially those that are younger or maybe a little less seasoned than me, and a lot of professionalism. I'm a professional engineer, and doing thing at the highest level you're capable of is something that does motivate me, and interacting with others and leading through example is a big deal. So I get a lot of satisfaction out of doing that.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So how did you work your way into your project management role?
Yeah, I kind of explained it a little bit. I think experience helps a lot. That way, you're not just in your career, you might get thrown into things. For example, sustainability is a field that no one really knows about, and so there's people that have really stepped up into that. But if you're lucky enough to develop and learn from other engineers, other leaders, other project managers, is a value. There's a colleague that I have that likes to say that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and if you step back and remember that, use those tools that have been developed, those processes, and those sort of things to really and improve upon them, because there is always room for improvement. And be okay with that, right? You're not going to get it right the first time. I remember looking back at one of the first documents I sealed, and I'm like, ooh, like that wasn't. It's not going to kill anybody, but I think I could have done better. And so have that mindset, and continuous improvement is an important part.
Yeah, no, that's great. So what would you say being a leader means to you?
One thing, and I saw this question, I wrote it down. You see it, you own it. So if you see something that's broken or you see something that needs to be fixed, try to do anything and everything you can to improve upon that. Uh, a good example is when you're on a construction site and you see trash on the ground. If you pick it up, that that is contagious. Other people are going to keep the site better, right? And that site being cleaned up leads to safety and other things that really does it. So taking ownership of the problem goes a long ways. Um, so that's what I'd say.
Yep, yep. And what would you say you enjoy most about being in a leadership position? What about it appeals the most to you?
So one of the most satisfying things that I see with what we do in pipeline construction and compressor station construction that really is truly satisfying is I do believe the narrative that Williams makes a big difference on making communities better. Uh, it's really neat to take a raw piece of land and put something that you're proud of, that like a compressor station or a meter station or a valve setting, that makes our systems more reliable, that makes our systems safer, and can deliver I mean, we move about half of the country's natural gas. It's a clean bridge fuel until we figure out some alternative that's absolutely, no impact to the environment. But natural gas burn is clean. So my narrative of sleeping well at night, knowing that what I'm doing makes a difference, trying to plan out these projects and put them in with as little impact as possible, and really make the United States better position to be strong and to also serve the citizens with cheap, reliable energy.
Making energy happen, of course,
And
of
that's right.
course.
That's what we do.
I guess this is a really good question I wanted to ask you personally. But how do you motivate your team, as a project team? How do you motivate your team to perform at a high level or at a level that meets your standards?
Yeah. One thing that I feel like really helps is all the leaders that I felt like led the best were not afraid to get into the trenches with you. Didn't just delegate tasks, right? It was like, okay, I don't have time to do every single step of it, but let's talk about what you're going to do. So being able to get into the trenches with you, and if you get stuck, being able to, it's a war analogy, right? Being able to shoot back. And so, if a good leader helps take ownership of a problem and then suggests ways to do solutions and talk it through with you, I think that really plays a lot into it. Um, if you're a manager, obviously you have to manage your people and try to give them the tools and resources necessary. Um, the worst thing you could do is just think that that individual contributor is just an island and that they are smart enough to fix it by themselves. A lot of feedback is really good. So if they're off course, steer them back. There was a boss that I had at one time that said, everybody I hire, I don't hire anybody but IndyCar race car drivers, right? So they can go up to 500 miles an hour. The big thing I've got to do is make sure if they need to go to Dallas, I don't let them go towards Galveston on I-45 and end up in the Gulf because that would be disastrous, right? So I got to make sure I point them in the right direction before they take off. And so I like that analogy because everybody's like, oh yeah, you get further away from where you need to go if they're not paying attention. So that's what a good leader
Yeah.
does, is make sure that everybody's paying attention.
Wow. Well, that was a really good answer. Um, I guess in your experience in your career, what conflict resolution techniques have you used or do you currently use right now? This could be an example of when a project team member is underperforming or when your project team members are having disagreements between themselves. What kind of techniques do you use to resolve conflict?
So there's probably the techniques that I try to use is communication, right? I just communication is never going to hurt you. Over communicating, I don't think doesn't exist when you're in the leadership position. Um, One thing that is challenging and that you have to remember in today's world is that tone is not always communicated. So if I were to say, I can't believe this is happening, that could be a great thing. Like, I can't believe this is happening. This is so exciting. I can't believe this is happening. Or your car just gets stolen. I can't believe this is happening. Right? Two completely things. I think there was a commercial on that. But be aware of that. The tone is not conveyed through email or through text or any of that. And so as a leader, you need to make sure that somehow you, at the beginning of that communication, if it's not in person, it's not visual, that you're doing that. And so same thing with conflicts. Like, it's set the tone and then the rest will follow, right? Of what you're trying to resolve, and be factual. Base everything as much conflict as you can on facts. Uh, the opinions part of them probably won't get you where you want to go. So,
Right. So
yep,
taking like an objective stance with things rather than trying to, kind of fit your own narrative in there and, try to look at it holistically, I guess, in a
yep.
way.
I think that's a great way of saying it. Absolutely.
Hmm. That's really nice. Um, okay, what would you say is the most difficult part of being a leader and managing either your own projects or a group of people involved in the project?
Yeah, and I think there's probably 100 books written on this. None of it is easy, right? You take ownership of leading people, and you're responsible for that. Um, the thing that's probably the hardest, and I think one of the professors talked about it, is said business in general is pretty easy, right? It's numbers, it's sense, it's supply and demand. Like everything fits into a box pretty easily. He said what makes business hard is the people. And so leaders, what do they have to do? They don't really have to lead through cutting checks and balancing checkbooks and making sure that you have enough money. It's making sure that the people are coordinated correctly. Um, I mean, just look at like the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. There's no real reason other than it's very complicated and it has 100% to do with people having conflict. So that is the hardest part of being a leader is managing people.
I have to agree. And then what advice would you give to younger people looking to progress in their careers and improve their leadership slash management capabilities? And, maybe at one point, get into a more formal leadership position or like become a manager, a project manager where you're having to manage not only people, but also the project overall and its finances and schedule and all that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about it earlier. Like, as a young person, don't be scared to approach leaders. They're human, right? They put their pants leg on one leg at a time, like in the morning, right? They're just human. Um, I wrote down, don't be scared to apply for positions you don't think you're going to qualify. You probably won't get that position, but you're going to learn a lot in the interviewing process and you're going to get feedback. Like a good leader is going to want to develop people who are brave enough to step up to say, hey, I think I might qualify for this. Um, be confident, like challenge yourself, like talk to your spouse, significant other, mother, sister, brother, like, get a reflection on that and be confident, like, know your worth, like try to push yourself to what you think you're worth. But at the same time, I did write down, like, never demand too much money because I don't think that's going to work out for you in your career. You can ask for responsibility, but asking for the wrong ways for raises that are just because you think it's time is not what leaders want to hear. So um, take take ownership of your career. I think we probably heard that pretty good. I think Williams does a good job in their engineering development program to encourage, to challenge, to push. Um, I see a lot of movement, lateral movement. Lateral movement's fine. Even a movement backwards can eventually pay off.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point you made there about, not always demanding too much money. I think for some
Mm-hmm.
people, job satisfaction is a lot more important than, how much they're making. You could always go get a job that pays, 15,
Mm-hmm.
20% more. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, if you're not being fulfilled in what you do, then, could you really say that you like your job, this is
Yep.
somewhere you see yourself. So I think that was a really
And
good point.
yeah, I mean, Williams is pretty steady, right? But there's a lot of companies that are they might not be there tomorrow. Like the economy has been doing really good for quite some time now.
Yeah.
There's weird things going on that you're going to study about inverted yield curves and those sort of things that historically don't make sense, and then all of a sudden, you're glad you have a job, um, and so keep that in mind of stability and a good work environment is worth a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that was my last question. Thank you,
Good.
Trey. I really appreciate you helping me out with this. And as a OSU alumni, I'm sure you know what it's like to be in my shoes. So
That's
really
right.
appreciate your time today. And just thanks for everything. This is a great interview. I really liked your answers.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lenny.
No problem.